So that fear of freedom that he's talking about. So first off, Joost Meerloo, he's a fascinating dude, man. As it says here, he's a Dutch-American physician and psychoanalyst. He was a Belgian, and he was mostly operating during World War II. His job was to prepare allies, for counter-interrogation. So people who were part of the Belgian resistance, the Nazis invaded, took over Belgium, and he was, so of course there was a resistance movement against it. So his job was to prepare people when the Nazis capture you. Because if you're a spy, or whatever, if they capture you, here's how you resist their techniques. And so he wrote a book on brainwashing called Rape of the Mind. And I'm trying to figure out a way to teach it. There's the first chapter for Rape of the Mind. It might be one of the most accessible because it's not super technical. But I wanted to teach that to you guys. It's on my slate of stuff to do. Does that sound interesting at all, like brainwashing?
Yes.
Learning how to mess with people?
Yes.
But because those things are really valuable because you learn not, I don't want you to know how to do it. So and I wouldn't want you to know how to do it because then you'll do it to people. But I want you to know what they are so that you know when it's happening to you. And that's the important thing. It's like, why should you know some type of self-defense? Not so that you can go around and beat people up, but so that if someone tries to beat you up, you know what it looks like when someone's coming at you and you can kind of resist it. It's the same idea with psychology. Don't learn psychology just so that you can mess with other people, but do it so that you can improve yourself and improve the world as well. And don't improve yourself at the expense of the world, but improve yourself in conjunction with the world. And so he's saying here that there's a fear of freedom, that when we have choices, that it's the choices that oftentimes scare us, they frighten us, because especially for you guys, like you get brought up in school for 12 years, and then suddenly you get dumped out into the real world. And I don't know what that even means, the real world, because aren't you already living in the real world? You're not living in the Matrix. You're getting a bit of a taste of what the real world is like. And especially in this class, you get a great, maybe a more prolonged taste of what the real world is like. This is why I don't go around, like I've said, and, hey, come on, do your work, you can do it, I believe in you, and all of that. I'm not that person who's going to push and push and push. Maybe if I taught 6th grade or 7th grade or something like that, but certainly not with 12th grade. And I just don't care about 10th grade. So there's no pushing there at all. But you're finding out right now, and especially as we wind more towards the end of the school year, you're finding out more about who you really are. Because you're given more choices, you're given more options. Attendance doesn't matter so much. You find that your teachers are a bit more lax with you. You're allowed more freedom. I mean, more lax than you were when you were 9th graders, for sure. And then you find out really who you are. When someone isn't standing above you, forcing you to do stuff, what are you doing?
Nothing.
So then you're finding out who you are. You're finding out that you are nothing, like maybe no. You find out that you're not. You find that you're somebody who has to be pushed from the outside. And by the way, this doesn't make you a terrible person. It means you're not self-motivated. But then again, most people are not. Most people are not. And it's a tough thing for some reason for people to find out that they're kind of common and normal and average. Because, I mean, average is not a terrible thing. Think about it. Half the population is average. And then you don't want to be unaverage in the wrong direction. 25% of people are below average, and then 25% of people roughly are above average. So you don't want to be on the wrong side of that, but there's a pretty good chance, 75%, that you're in those either average or above average. And so most people again need to be pushed. They're not self-starters. They're not self-motivators, and that's just the way of the world. But it's a good thing to know that about yourself. Again, because it's not a judgment. It's not saying you're a terrible person because you're not these things. But can you possibly conceptualize what your life would be like if you were? Like really think about that. Imagine if you're the kind of person who can set your alarm for 5:30 in the morning and actually get up out of bed and start doing things at 5:30 in the morning. You have to be here till 7:30. Imagine what you could do with an extra, whatever time you wake up now, 6:30, 7. Imagine what you could do with an extra hour, hour and a half of day. Yeah, you could, and then you multiply that out by 7 days a week because you don't sleep in on Sundays either because you get yourself used to a normal clock. And then you think about what you could do with an extra 7, 10 hours a week. Multiply that out by 30 days. 30 to 45 hours a month, what you could possibly accomplish. And when I say that, it's impossible almost to even imagine what you can accomplish because you've never done it before. It becomes impossible to conceptualize what you're capable of. And that's one of those really, really hard things about life, because we limit ourselves by the things that we think that we're capable of. And we conceptualize what we're capable of by the things that we're doing right now. It's like if you're a C student, could you possibly be an A student? You probably conceptualize yourself and say, maybe I could be like a C plus or B minus student. But an A student, oh no, that's for the smart kids. No?
Yes, every day.
It's easier. If you're just naturally gifted, telling the truth, it's easier. But imagine if you work hard, you're going to outwork people. Now imagine if it turns out that you're more gifted than you even realized. Maybe it's just because you've never applied the skills and talents that you have. And now imagine what your life is going to be like if you discover what your talents and skills are, then you only discover them because you actually try something. Like, I wonder how many of you would be absolutely gifted marathon runners, and you have no idea. Because you're like, oh, hell no, I'm no runner. Just because you never have been before. Imagine how, I wonder how many of you, I don't know, could have played in the NBA. I don't like going that far, with just athletics, because we focus too much on athletics. I wonder how many of you could have been astrophysicists. In fact, I wonder how many of you still can be astrophysicists. Like, what you're capable of, you don't even know. It's impossible to know, because we create this character that you're living right now, that was shaped largely not by your choice, but by the choices of your parents or your guardians, whoever raised you. You were born into a certain time, you were born into a certain place, to a certain family, who raised you up a certain way in the first 5 years of your life, which are very formative. And then much of your life is based off of that. And it's very difficult now to go back and try to reprogram ourselves, because it's the water that we're swimming in. Remember the story of the fish? I told you this one, yes?
No.
Yeah, I think so. Young fish are swimming out in the ocean, or out in the lake, whatever. And the big fish comes up next to them and is like, hey, how's the water? Yeah, and they're like, what's water? The lives that we're living through, the psychology, the ways that we see the world, these paradigms, they're the water that we live in. And once you realize, this is water, and water behaves a certain way. And because water behaves a certain way, I can now swim faster, I can cut differently, but it always takes understanding. It takes realizing who you are and why you are the way that you are. Then once you do that, now you can start to realize, I've been limiting myself in certain ways. Ways that you never even conceptualized before. But it's terrifying, because that means that you're going to have to reassemble yourself. So now that you're kind of taking yourself apart to understand, you haven't broken yourself down to the point where you've destroyed yourself or anything like that. But you've broken yourself down to the point where you understand who you are. And that can be terrifying. That can be the abyss into which one gazes. That can be confronting the monsters that are inside, of course. But once you can do that, now you can start to reassemble yourself to be the person that you want to be. Or at least, hopefully the person that you can possibly conceptualize, but that's difficult. So maybe start with understanding who it is that who you want to be. Maybe you say, I want to be somebody who's more dependable. And that's an absolutely wonderful place to start. So how do you become more dependable? Simple. Not easy, but simple. You do what you say you're going to do. If you say you're going to be there at 6, you're there at 6. Don't be that person who says, oh my God, I'm always running late. If you're always running late, then that means that you're always trying to catch up, which means you're always hectic, which means that you're always kind of in your own head and you're anxious. And you're also treating the people around you, you're treating their time like it's meaningless. And it builds up an annoyance towards you because you're always late. That means that people are always waiting for you. It's a complete disrespect of other people's time. And some people are accepting of it, and a lot of people are not. Unfortunately, the opportunities that you might want in life are probably going to come from the people who are going to be annoyed by it, not by the people who are going to be charmed by it. But imagine who you could be if you put yourself now to a point where, I'm not saying you have to be there an hour early, but imagine if you're able to get there a little bit early, stretch out a little bit, be calm, have your demeanor there, and then move forward. And then people will say, oh no, I can be late and still be like that. No, it's the water you're swimming in. You think that you are, because that's just what you're used to. But it'd be interesting to find out what that water really is, if you assemble yourself that way. So be a person who's dependable. Be that person that everybody can turn to. And then, of course, once you know something about life, if you're that person that people can turn to, guess what's going to happen? A lot of people are going to turn to you now. It's just like if you suddenly become wealthy. It doesn't have to be suddenly, sorry. In your life, if you become wealthy, you're going to have all kinds of family members you never knew you had, right? You know? And they all remember you way back, and they all raised you, and they all, it's like, I tell you, they'll come to you like some like half-assed business plan. Like, I got this idea for a business. It's a car wash, but it's also a pet wash. So you put the pet on top of the car in the basket, and you wash them both at the same time. Can I have $1 million to start this? You might like, nah. Man, when you were 6 months, you had a chupon that broke off, and I took it out of your mouth, man. You wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for me. You're so ungrateful, and they store them off with their business plan that's written in crayon, But when you're dependable, you're going to find out that people are going to depend on you and turn to you for lots of things. And so what you can do is build yourself up that way. But now there's another really important skill that you have to learn, which is self-worth as well. You have to be able to say no to certain things because people are going to depend on you for lots of things. Now what's going to happen when you tell people no? They get angry and they're going to do what we just had an example of right there. Yeah, they're going to say all kinds of terrible things about you. They're going to badmouth you.
Karen.
Yeah, they're going to Karen you. But that's your reputation, and you can't necessarily control that. All that you can control is how you respond to situations in life. But what's easier for us is to not try to express our freedom, because that's an expression of your freedom. That's an expression of your free will. To be able to reassemble yourself and figure out who you want to be. Or you can just live with the programming that was done to you in the first several years of your life. And understand that your ability to turn away from that and exercise your free will now becomes more and more and more narrow over time. And that means that you're going to be the person who's probably more dependent on others. You're probably going to, there's going to be something in you probably that's going to give you a sense that you don't have control over your own life. And by the way, if you have a sense that you don't have control over your own life, you probably don't. And you can tell me, how anxious does that make you feel? How many of you right now would love to just not be here and get up and not have to listen to this?
Probably like later in the day.
Later in the day, you're going to feel like that? Yeah. Man, I want to leave Scallon's class. It's 6th period. Oh, never mind. No, that's the thing. And so why is it that it bothers you to have to, why does it bother you to be here?
It's the trade-off that you would do.
It's the vibe the school gives.
The vibe of the school gives? But you're not in the school. You're in my room.
It's way too early to have
You're
it.
too early?
You're told what time to be here, you're told what time to go to lunch,
Yeah.
you're told whether or not to go back.
Exactly. And so as many of you are going to make the decision, many of you are sitting here like, man, I don't want to be told what to do. This is stupid. Why should I have to listen to this? Why is this guy still talking? Why should I have to listen to this? And then, 6 months from now, actually, I'm sorry. Yeah, like a few months from now, no, like 2 months from now, you're going to be applying to pay a whole bunch of money to go to a school
To do the
exact same thing. And you'll be like, now I'm paying for it. Because it's my choice.
Right?
Yeah. And you're going to repeat the exact same process. And guess what that process is going to be like in college? I told you already. For most of the professors, it's going to be exactly this, that person talking to you. Now, my experience is a professor, I've had professors like this, no joke, who come in and they read a lecture off of a page.
Oh my God.
And then they leave. And you're in an auditorium with like 100 people. Or you'll have a professor who will talk very monotonously. You do have some very dynamic people. I've studied under some wonderfully dynamic people. My mentor, I've told you before, Mr. Richards, this guy had 3 earned doctorates, and he went by the name Mr. Richards. This is why people just call me, I hate people call me Mr. Scallon. I really hate that. That's my dad. I prefer just Scallon, simple, I don't insist on Dr. Scallon because Mr. Richards didn't insist on Dr. Richards, and that guy had 3 doctorates. That guy could go by Drs. Richards, And when he taught, man, this guy's dynamic. He would, hot, intense, and everyone's, Talk softly. Everyone leans in. And once you lean in, he's got you. Listen! I'm listening. What is it? This guy's just, off the wall. He'll come in and he'll teach you communism, and you'll swear to God this guy's a communist. And you'll be like, comrade, how do we join the revolution? And he'll say, return next class. I'll be signing you up. We'll be ready. And then you show up, all of a sudden the guy's like a laissez-faire capitalist. And he's explaining about how everything he said last time was completely inaccurate, and this is, you're like, okay, yeah. Hate the commies, down with the pinkos. Where do we invest? And he's a wonderful lecturer. So you'll come across those people in your life. Like, think about that. There are people in your life who you just like listening to them talk, because there's something that's there. Either they've got wisdom or they've got some kind of a passion, or they're just dynamic and entertaining. But you'll come across those people in your lives, and you can learn a lot from those people, because there's something about that that's interesting and fascinating, and it helps us to conceptualize about what a person could be. And if that means that a person could be that, if there's something in them that you admire, that means that you could be that too. But again, it takes that freedom and that responsibility to reassemble ourselves. And that's difficult to do, man, because it takes digging into our past, and we're all reluctant historians of our past. How many of you guys want to dig into your childhood trauma? Awesome. If you want to, you can turn yourself around very efficiently. And if you don't want to, guess what? You're going to confront it anyway. You confront it every day without realizing it in the ways in which we live. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?